There comes a moment, a divine pause, when a woman goes silent, not because she's weak, but because she's done talking to the level beneath her destiny. When a woman stops explaining, stops reacting, stops defending, you better pay attention because something spiritual is happening. Silence in its purest form is not absence, it's strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to hear me clearly today. You don't measure a woman's power by the volume of her voice. You measure it by the depth of her restraint. See, when a woman chooses silence, it is rarely about retreat. It's about elevation. It means she has exited the realm of reaction and entered the realm of revelation. There is a kind of woman, rare and refined, who has discovered that not every battle is hers to fight. She knows that some things are beneath her assignment. When she walks into a room, her silence speaks louder than words. She no longer responds to provocation. She no longer performs for attention. She no longer participates in emotional warfare. Why? Because her spirit has detached from chaos and attached to purpose. When a woman becomes silent, you must ask, what has she discovered? You see, silence is the language of those who've seen something greater, something eternal. And when a woman connects to what is eternal, what is temporal cannot disturb her anymore. Some women don't raise their voice, not because they can't, but because they've learned that elevation requires focus. And focus requires silence. She doesn't waste her breath arguing over things that don't grow her. That silence, that's divine insulation. You better be careful around a woman who doesn't need to be seen, who doesn't need to be heard, but is always watching. That's a dangerous woman. That's a woman who has divorced herself from needing validation. She has stopped drinking from the wells of others' approval and has dug her own. I tell you, the woman who can detach emotionally without bitterness is a spiritual force. She has stopped reacting to people and started responding to God. And when a woman lives in obedience to the voice of the Holy Spirit, her silence becomes prophetic. People think silence is passive. No, silence is preparation. While others are talking, she's building. While others are arguing, she's aligning. While others are complaining, she's conquering. The most dangerous women in history were not always the loudest. Esther was silent in the king's palace until it was time to speak, and when she did, nations were preserved. Mary said only one sentence to the angel and then carried divinity in her womb. Hannah spoke no words in the temple, only moved her lips, and God heard her silence and gave her a prophet. A woman who is spiritually detached from nonsense is a woman who has entered power. She can walk away without anger. She can be present without explaining. She can release you without resentment. That kind of woman isn't empty. She's full of purpose, full of grace, full of fire. When you see a woman go silent, don't misinterpret it. She's not broken. She's becoming. She's not ignoring, she's ascending. God has pulled her into a place where noise cannot enter. He's shielding her from the battles that drain and positioning her for the assignment that demands her full strength. This kind of woman, she's a sanctuary, not a circus. She's a mountain, not a mirror. You don't climb her for attention. You approach her with reverence. Silence is not weakness. It is a language of discernment and authority. When a woman chooses to remain silent, especially in moments where others expect her to defend, explain, or retaliate, she is not retreating. She is exercising a level of wisdom that cannot be taught in classrooms. Her silence is not absence, but presence on another level. It means she sees more than she says. It means she understands that power doesn't always need to make noise. In fact, some of the most profound shifts happen in stillness. A woman who is spiritually aware knows that silence can protect her from unnecessary battles. She doesn't need to prove her point because truth proves itself over time. She doesn't argue with people who are not ready to understand her because she recognizes that discernment tells her who to pour into and who to walk away from. Silence becomes her language of protection, not just from others, but from herself, so she doesn't waste her emotional energy on things that are not aligned with her purpose. Authority doesn't always shout, it stands, it listens, it observes. And when a woman walks in silence, she is often walking in divine alignment. Her silence is not an empty space, it is a room full of divine counsel. She listens to the spirit, not to noise. She watches not to judge, but to perceive. Her stillness is the evidence of inner order. And inner order is the foundation of lasting power. In a noisy world, a silent woman stands out not for her absence, but for her presence. She carries weight. She moves with intention, and her silence speaks volumes about who she is and whose she is. That kind of silence is not weakness, it is the highest expression of disciplined authority. A silent woman has mastered the realm of emotions and no longer reacts, she responds with wisdom. This mastery is not accidental. It is the fruit of deep inner work and spiritual maturity. She has learned that reacting to everything is a sign of being controlled by everything. But when she responds, it means she has processed, prayed, and positioned herself above the chaos. Her silence is not suppression, it is selection. She chooses what deserves her energy, her words, and her emotions. Many confuse emotional silence with emotional numbness. But this woman is not numb, she is focused. She feels deeply, but she no longer allows her feelings to drive her decisions. She has trained her soul to wait. Wait before speaking, wait before moving, wait before investing. Because she knows that reactions are emotional reflexes, but responses are spiritual choices. And those choices are what shape destiny. When a woman refuses to react, people may assume she is indifferent, but in reality, she is discerning. She no longer gives access to her peace so easily. She understands that not every provocation is worthy of her voice, and not every conflict requires her attendance. Emotional mastery has taught her that silence is power, not passivity. It means she owns herself. She is not at the mercy of moods, insults, or manipulation. She is rooted in something deeper than emotion. She is rooted in purpose. She knows that wisdom often waits. It doesn't rush to be right. It doesn't need to win arguments. It seeks outcomes, not applause. And so when she chooses silence, it's not because she doesn't know what to say. It's because she knows what's worth saying, and more importantly, what's not. That kind of emotional discipline is not common. It is rare, and it is powerful. True power is hidden, not broadcasted. The quiet woman holds influence others can't perceive. In a world that celebrates noise, exposure, and constant validation, the woman who operates in silence is underestimated by those who cannot discern true strength. But the most impactful people are often the least obvious. Real authority does not need attention to be effective. It functions quietly, precisely, and purposefully. A woman who carries inner strength does not need to declare it, she embodies it. She doesn't walk into a room needing to be seen because she knows who she is before she enters. Her presence speaks louder than her voice ever could. While others are performing for applause, she is preparing in silence. While others are seeking followers, she is cultivating fruit. And while the world is busy watching the stage, she is building something behind the curtain that will outlast the noise. This kind of woman does not chase power. She carries it. Hidden power is protected power. God often conceals his most valuable vessels until they are fully matured. He hides them in silence to preserve their strength, to shield them from premature exposure, and to prepare them for strategic release. That's why a quiet woman should never be dismissed. Just because she isn't loud doesn't mean she isn't lethal to the kingdom of darkness. Her prayers shake atmospheres. Her thoughts birth strategies. Her discipline builds legacies. She has learned that true influence is not about being seen, it's about being sent. And when God sends someone, he doesn't need a crowd's approval. He just needs obedience. This woman understands that and lives by it. She is not led by the urge to impress, but by the call to impact. And that's what makes her power both invisible and unstoppable. When a woman detaches emotionally, it is often a sign she has connected spiritually. What looks like distance on the outside is often divine alignment on the inside. She no longer finds her identity in who left, who stayed, or who understands her. She has discovered that emotional dependency weakens her discernment, so she begins to cut the cords of unhealthy attachments. Not out of bitterness, but out of obedience to something higher. Emotional detachment is not a lack of feeling. It is the strength to not let feelings rule. There comes a moment when she realizes that peace is more valuable than presence, and purpose is more important than proximity. She stops chasing people who drain her and starts chasing the God who fills her. That shift is what separates the ordinary from the anointed. Her silence is not just a withdrawal, it's a consecration. It means she has shifted her trust from man to God, from the seen to the unseen, from emotion to revelation. Emotional detachment is one of the clearest signs that a woman is undergoing spiritual transformation. She's not trying to win every argument anymore. She's not begging to be understood. She's not responding to every call for attention. Why? Because she's tuned her ear to a higher frequency. She has tasted the presence of God, and nothing else satisfies her soul like that. So while others are worried about who likes them, she's more concerned about what God is saying to her. That kind of detachment is dangerous to the enemy. It means he can no longer manipulate her through guilt, fear, or rejection. She is no longer entangled in emotional webs. She is free. And in that freedom, she finds clarity. In that clarity, she finds direction. And in that direction, she walks with power. Noise often comes from insecurity, but silence is the echo of confidence and clarity. When a woman is unsure of herself, she speaks to fill the space, to convince others, and often to convince herself. But when she becomes rooted in who she is, she no longer feels the need to explain, defend, or seek validation. Insecurity speaks to be seen. Confidence speaks only when necessary. And a woman who has found clarity no longer depends on noise to define her presence. A secure woman understands that her value is not determined by how many people notice her, but by how many lives she quietly impacts. She does not need to be loud to be heard. Her spirit speaks before her mouth does. Her energy carries a calm authority that silences confusion and commands respect without ever demanding it. In a culture that rewards constant talking and endless opinions, her silence becomes a radical act of strength. She has learned that when you're unsure of your identity, you overcompensate. You perform, over-explain, and exhaust yourself trying to be accepted. But when you know who you are, and more importantly, whose you are, you begin to retreat from that chaos. You understand that clarity requires stillness. You learn that true revelation comes not in the noise of the crowd, but in the quietness of your spirit. This woman is not cold or distant. She is anchored. Her silence is not a void. It is a vault. Inside it are treasures of wisdom, discipline, and divine intimacy. People may misinterpret her stillness as passivity, but those who are wise will see it for what it is, a sign that she has settled the most important questions within herself. And once those questions are answered, there's no need to prove anything to anyone. Purpose silences distractions. When a woman knows who she is, she no longer needs to explain herself. Identity rooted in purpose eliminates the desire for validation. She no longer feels the pressure to impress, compare, or compete because she understands her lane, her timing, and her assignment. That kind of clarity creates peace. And that peace produces silence. It's not the silence of confusion, it's the silence of focus. She's not ignoring people, she's investing in what God has placed in her hands. Distraction thrives where there is no direction. But once direction is revealed, everything that doesn't align with purpose begins to lose its appeal. When a woman steps into her purpose, she naturally steps away from noise. Gossip no longer excites her. Drama no longer pulls her in. Small talk no longer consumes her time. Why? Because her vision demands her energy. Her calling requires her attention. She knows that every conversation isn't worth her voice, and every room isn't worthy of her presence. This woman has learned that purpose filters everything. It tells her what to say yes to and what to walk away from. And because she is led by vision, not emotion, she no longer spends her life trying to prove her worth to people who were never assigned to understand her. She is not rude, but she is rooted. She is not loud, but she is locked in. Her silence is not isolation. It's intentional consecration. She understands that the greatest battles are not fought with words, but with wisdom. And wisdom often chooses silence over senseless exchange. Her focus is her fortress. And when you see her quiet, it's not because she's lost her voice. It's because she's found her purpose. And purpose has made everything else irrelevant. Silence is a weapon against manipulation, and emotional detachment is her shield. When a woman stops allowing her emotions to be controlled by others, she becomes spiritually dangerous to anything that once had a hold on her. Manipulators thrive on reaction. They provoke to pull you in, confuse to distract you, and guilt you into submission. But when a woman refuses to be baited by emotional games, she disarms every tactic sent to weaken her. Her silence frustrates those who once fed on her need to explain, to defend, or to please. She has learned that not every question deserves an answer, and not every accusation requires a response. Her silence is strategic. It's not because she doesn't have something to say. It's because what she has is too sacred to be wasted on the wrong audience. Emotional detachment doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means she cares deeply, but has chosen to place her emotions under divine authority. She's no longer tossed by the winds of manipulation because her heart is anchored in truth. This woman no longer responds to guilt trips, passive-aggressive comments, or gaslighting tactics. She sees through them. Her discernment has matured, and with it, her boundaries have solidified. Silence has become her resistance. It protects her peace and maintains her clarity. Manipulation thrives in chaos, but she has chosen stillness. She understands that sometimes silence is louder than confrontation. It's not silence from fear, it's silence from freedom. When you no longer need to prove yourself, when you no longer fall into emotional traps, when your no doesn't need an explanation, you become untouchable to manipulation. Her emotional detachment is not coldness, it's wisdom dressed in peace. It's the evidence of a woman who refuses to let chaos determine her course. The most dangerous woman is not the loudest, but the one who can walk away without drama. When a woman reaches the point where she no longer needs to argue, beg, or convince, she has tapped into a higher dimension of strength. Her power lies in her ability to choose peace over chaos, purpose over attention, and self-respect over emotional validation. She understands that walking away is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the mature recognition that staying in dysfunction costs more than her silence can afford. She no longer reacts to provocation because her identity is no longer tied to being understood. She no longer stays to fix what is unwilling to grow. She knows that her assignment is too valuable to be delayed by battles that only drain. So she walks away, not with bitterness, but with grace. She doesn't make a scene because her exit is her statement. Her absence becomes more powerful than her presence ever needed to be. This kind of woman is dangerous because she has trained herself to detach with dignity. She knows that closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes it's a decision. She doesn't waste her energy on explanations when the fruit of her life will speak louder than words ever could. Her silence isn't passive, it's prophetic. It declares, I'm not where I used to be, and I'm not staying where I don't belong. People often underestimate the woman who quietly leaves the room. But what they don't see is that she's already entered another one filled with purpose, peace, and divine clarity. She doesn't need revenge, attention, or validation. She only needs alignment with the will of God. And once she has that, nothing can pull her back into what she walked away from with wisdom and strength. When a woman stops speaking, she often starts building. Silence births strategy. It is in the quiet that ideas form, plans develop, and visions take shape. While others are caught up in conversation, explanation, and distraction, the woman who chooses silence is constructing something far greater than words, a future aligned with purpose. Her retreat is not resignation, but recalibration. She understands that progress is often made in the background, not the spotlight. She has discovered the secret of sacred spaces, where silence becomes the soil for divine downloads. In her stillness, she hears God more clearly. In her quiet, she sees patterns others miss. Her silence is not a void, it's a workshop, a laboratory, a sacred place where old wounds are healed, clarity is refined, and blueprints are drawn. This woman is not inactive, she is intensely focused. Her silence is the sound of bricks being laid one by one, of foundations being strengthened for what is to come. Those who underestimate her absence don't understand that she's not missing, she's multiplying. She's not hiding, she's honing. And when she reemerges, she won't come back the same. She'll return with wisdom, strategy, and fruit that speaks louder than any speech she could have given. In this silence, she learns to partner with purpose. She becomes a steward of her time, a guardian of her mind, and a curator of her future. Her energy is no longer scattered. It is streamlined. She does not have time for petty debates when she is birthing destiny. What looks like withdrawal is actually a divine advancement. She is moving in ways the natural eye cannot perceive, and when her work is revealed, people will wonder how it was done. The answer will be simple. She built it in silence. God often hides his most powerful vessels in quietness to protect their purity and prepare their influence. When a woman is set apart for something greater, heaven doesn't parade her, it conceals her. She may feel overlooked, forgotten, or underestimated, but what's really happening is preservation. God covers what he treasures. He keeps it in the shadows until the time is right, not to punish, but to prepare. The silence she experiences is not emptiness, it's incubation. She is not being ignored. She is being shaped. God hides her to refine her character, purify her motives, and deepen her intimacy with Him. She learns to move without applause and to believe without confirmation. In that hiddenness, she discovers that her worth is not in being seen by man, but in being known by God. And when He finishes the work in secret, He will reveal it in power. What has been hidden in quiet will be released in glory. This woman begins to see that her isolation was divine strategy. Her silence was not a sign of stagnation, but a sacred season of transformation. While others rise quickly and fall loudly, she rises slowly and stands securely, because her foundation is not built on noise, it's built on truth. In the hidden place, she's developed the kind of resilience that can't be shaken, the kind of faith that doesn't waver, and the kind of wisdom that comes only from heaven. God doesn't expose what He hasn't established. So He hides her gifts, protects her voice, and shields her anointing until the time of release. And when she steps forward, she won't just make an appearance, she will make an impact. The silence wasn't delay. It was divine protection, ensuring that when she arrives, she's not only ready, she's unstoppable. So hear this truth with all the weight of divine authority. When a woman becomes silent, don't misread her stillness as surrender. It is not the end of her story. It is the beginning of her strategy. She is not shrinking. She is sharpening. She is not avoiding. She is aligning. And when she finally speaks, moves, or shows up, it will not be with noise. It will be with undeniable power. The silent woman is not powerless. She is sacred. She is refined. She is dangerous to anything that once tried to control her, confuse her, or contain her. Because now she no longer moves from emotion. She moves from conviction. She no longer reacts from pain. She responds from purpose. Her silence was never empty. It was preparation. And what was cultivated in silence will shake foundations in the open. Never underestimate the power of a woman who has chosen to be quiet. For in her silence, she has found her voice. In her stillness, she has found her strength. And in her surrender to God, she has become a force that cannot be stopped.